Welcome back to DC Motorworks. Thank you for tuning in. Today we're going to spend a few minutes with one of my favorite Mercedes engines. This is the M156. You may have seen us talk about it in a few other videos, again, because like I said, it's one of my favorites. But this is also used in the SLS as the M159. This particular one is the M156. So this is the 6.2 liter naturally aspirated V8 that was developed solely by AMG. Contrary to what some of my technicians think, this is a fabulous engine. But like I said, we're going to spend a few minutes checking this one out. And Blake is working on this one currently, so we'll throw him in somewhere here and he'll give you a little rundown of what he's doing. But we're going to tell you everything wrong with this engine.
Hey guys, my name is Blake. I work here at DC Motorworks. Today we got a 212 chassis E-Class. We're doing a little bit of top-end engine work today. We got some cam adjusters out, we're rebuilding, and we're doing some head bolts, quick head bolt job. And then we're also doing some lifters as well. So we're doing Mercedes-Benz Engine 156 cam adjuster plate rebuilds. These are the new ones from 63 Motorsports that we're installing. This is an example of an old one here. As you can see, kind of dirty, but there's wear here on this pin. And this is the old pin. We install new plates, new pins. This is prevents your rattle on startup. For each one's got one, an intake and exhaust. So there's 4 on this vehicle here. And so we rebuild each one of them individually. So I can show you here, we got this side all apart. Got new lifters, and we're putting the cams back in. All that stuff's back in and torqued and ready to roll. So once we get our cam adjusters rebuilt, we can put the engine back in time and put the valve cover back on, and we'll button this side back up. Then we'll just have to move on to that side. But this is our basic 156 engine rebuild. Usually a lot of the top end we go through. So we do all new lifters, new adjuster plates, new adjuster pins, and then I'll show you. We also do on this vehicle. There's a range of these that have issues with head bolts. So we did head bolts as well. Upgrade to these new guys here, brand new. So like I said, we got one side already all done with the cams back bolted down and torqued, and I'm working on right now doing the adjuster plates as we speak. So this part right here in the middle is actually what we're replacing with one of these guys. So just kind of have to take your time and pay attention. This is what it'll look like when they are rebuilt. You really can't tell much difference other than the fact that this plate right here is new. That's just to basic, pretty well engine wear, which this right here is what we're trying to fix. You can kind of see the hole is not as sharp as it should be. So we're just repairing that piece. Luckily these are rebuildable, so we can take care of it for the customer. There is not as much wear on, oh yeah, there is actually. There's a good bit of wear there. This is the exhaust side. So a good bit of wear right here where the lock pin actually goes in. So that's what we're actually fixing. Eventually this will get bad enough to where the pin won't be able to lock itself in this plate. So the cam, the front end of the engine, the cams area up top will actually rattle. So we're just going in and kind of preventative maintenance, kind of something obviously it needs as well already. You know, you're starting to see some good wear. So we go in and fix all these little pieces and parts. Actually, I need to run that one in. And this driver's side bank will be ready to put back together in the car. all our spare used parts. So these are one-time use diamond washers, diamond coated washers, and they actually are what hold this adjuster to the camshaft. So they are one-time use. So always have to make sure and dig those guys out. We do not want to reuse those. We got a set of brand new stretch bolts as well that we're going to be putting in. Those take the place of these guys. They're one-time use. They are torque to yield, so always replace those. And always replace our diamond washers here. Brand new one. So they're one-time use as well. And go back together with the engine, and it yeah, sound like brand new all over again. Good for another 100,000.
So here you can see we've got one valve cover off, and also the front cam covers, or camshaft adjuster covers. They have a lot of different names, upper timing covers, blah, blah, blah. But also have the camshaft adjusters off, so these are just the bare camshafts. And what we've got here, like I said, we're going to talk about everything that goes wrong with this engine. And this side is already complete. So if you look in here, you can see down in that hole, you can see a bolt. So those are one of the main things wrong that you'll hear a lot with the M156 is the head bolts. So when these first came out, there was an issue with the, I guess, metallurgy of the head bolts, and they would snap right at the head of the bolt. But yeah, you've actually got one old set and one new set, so you can see exactly what we're talking about here. So what would happen is the head of the bolt would break right at the flange there underneath where the threads meet the flange of the bolt. So this is a new one. It would break right there, and some of these go through coolant jackets, and of course it is what holds your cylinder head to the block. So you would get coolant in the cylinders, hydrolock the motor, it can be pretty bad. But you can see there is a very obvious change in the old head bolt, which is the torque style. And the new ones are in e-torques. So if you are looking at one of these engines, you can tell someone it's just a few hours to pull the valve covers. And like I said, you can just kind of peek your head down in there and see if you have the updated head bolts or not. So this client wanted the peace of mind. We have said multiple times that if they didn't break in the early part of the car's life, it is not so likely that they will break. I've only seen one car that broke at 120,000 miles. Any of the other ones tended to be under 30,000. But the peace of mind is a great thing to have, especially on an engine that costs around $6,000 to $8,000 used, as you may have heard in our ML63 video. So hopefully there will be an update on that car coming soon. But really the top end of these cars is the main problem, or engines I should say. But we also did a set of tappets on this engine here. So with either infrequent oil changes or using a low quality oil, the tappets here, which are under each of the cam lobes, you can see better here on the exhaust side. You can see we've got some break-in oil on there. But they're these little round tappets I'll show you in just a second. But that is what actuates the valve when the cam lobe hits it. But they actually spin within their bore, and with, you know, age, and like I said before, they will stop spinning, and then since they're not spinning, it creates friction on the cam lobe to the lifter, and it will wear a hole right through them, and it will also wear out the camshafts. You'll see, I've got a bad set somewhere, but it'll start to wear down the point on the lobe, and you'll get misfires, and it'll make a loud tapping noise. But this client wanted to go ahead and do a kind of like a M156 bulletproofing. So we've got those. I'm sure they're around here somewhere also. Yeah, we got a set of old tappets here. And again, we're on the top end of the motor, and we've got these guys here. So these are our camshaft adjusters or camshaft phasers. So what that does is effectively change the cam timing depending on what oil pressure is applied through here. You can see here we have the new plates. We get these from our good friends at 63 Motorsports up in Canada. We've gone through multiple sets of them. As you can see, we have a collection of them here. We actually started throwing away some of them because we have so many of them. But you'll see, where's an old one? You'll see here, and we've done a video on how to rebuild these, so you can check that out down the description below. But you can see it's just starting to wear on the pin there. That's not a very bad one. Like I said, this client was doing this as a peace of mind and kind of a while you're in there situation. Here's a very bad one. You can see the amount of wear there. So what happens is that wear on the plate, and then you've got your actuation pin here, will cause this pin to slip and it won't lock in, and you'll get that awful rattle sound on startup, which on cars that were this expensive new, it does not sound very good to your friends in the parking lot at Cars and Coffee or any of that fun stuff when you start up your AMG and it makes this awful rattling sound. So that kind of covers the main top end issues of this engine. They are super simple relatively to some of the more modern stuff. You can see it is just a timing chain does not go over the camshaft adjusters. The camshaft adjusters are run by a gear. Neat little tidbit of information, the lead engineer that did the Porsche V10 for the Carrera GT was the same lead engineer for this engine. So super cool, neat bit of info there. But another problem we have on this one, we will get some clips in about that one as well. We have a C63 here that bent a rod, which I'll show you here in just a second. Basically, it's got some of the 159 components with the forged piston, rod, so forth. But you can see that one's a little crooked. And problem with these is the fuel injectors. So with some miles, or there's kind of no rhyme or reason. Usually we go by mileage, but we started going more by age because the car that this came out of is a 2014, I believe it is, but it has 25,000 miles or so. And it still did that, and that's pretty unfortunate. But we've got it fixed up here. We'll show you. I'm not sure if that's going to be a separate video or part of this video, but we'll see how it turns out. Like I said, it is the fuel injectors, so it's a good peace of mind insurance to replace those at 6 to 8 years maybe. But they will stick open and dump fuel into the cylinder to the point it hydrolocks the cylinder. When you can't compress a ton of fuel, this is what happens. You compress metal instead. So, and that is a very expensive repair to tear down the engine, if it is repairable. Usually it is. I've seen it happen a bunch. And when you see some of these for sale, you'll look at the service history and you'll see a piston's been replaced, or 2 or 3 or whichever. So not a huge deal, but super expensive. I wouldn't say it's catastrophic anyway. But the bottom ends of these things are super stout. Never seen an issue out of one. I think I've heard of a few that have been abused and maybe ran low on oil or something like that. But it's generally the top end of the motors. Nothing quite like the later motor where you have valve guide issues or anything like that. Like, it's all replaceable stuff and easy to deal with. I mean, it is expensive. I say easy kind of loosely. It's just stuff we deal with on a day-to-day basis, but they're easy to time. They're easy to work on. You can have all this stuff apart if you've done it a bunch. You can do it within a day. So that's kind of what I love about them, and they make a fabulous noise. But like I said, nothing's really catastrophic, so I don't really worry about them a whole lot. I recommend them to a lot of people with the stipulation that you will have some expenses, just like this guy. We've been talking to him. He's been a client for a few years now, and we've talked about it and gone back and forth, but it was leaking real bad from, we call these the mustaches. I've got them somewhere, but we call them the mustache seals for the camshaft adjuster covers here. So that is very strong oil pressure, and they'll start leaking. And a lot of people will just replace the valve covers. But all that was being done, and I asked him, I said, hey, you know, we looked at your head bolts. They are the original ones. He's like, yeah, I've been thinking about it. We went kind of back and forth and decided it was time to go ahead and, we'll call it bulletproof, the M156 in his 212 chassis E63. So like I said, you're doing head bolts, tappets, camshaft adjusters. He is planning to do fuel injectors maybe himself at some point. He does like to do a little bit himself. But another issue, and probably the final one we'll talk about, is the intake manifold here. So this is a 3-piece intake manifold, and it is made out of that fabulous lightweight material called magnesium, which is actually not something we enjoy very much here at DC Motorworks because it degrades and falls apart. So you can see this one's actually in really good shape. I'm sure I could find something that has magnesium around here. We have a bunch of rear main seal plates from M112, M113, V6, V8 motors. They leak for the same reason. The magnesium turns kind of powdery and starts to corrode, and the glue we use, or sealant, silicone, it's called 5900. Sorry, it was just me looking to see if he had it nearby, but it will lose its adhesion to the glue, and you'll get an oil leak, or like in the case of the intake manifold here, you will get vacuum leaks and you'll get misfires and check engine lights because it is a unmetered air leak. Because here, if they were plugged in, those are your mass airflow sensors. So it says, hey, I'm getting air from somewhere else, and it does not like that. This engine in particular is very picky to air leaks. It'll actually set a fault code for this guy here, which is your fuel rail pressure sensor. And that code has caused a lot of us a lot of headache before it became more well known about what the fault was. But it sets a fault code for that, and a lot of people have replaced those falsely or incorrectly because what it usually is a vacuum leak. And because of the adaptation of the computer trying to compensate more fuel for the vacuum leak, it sees that the fuel rail pressure drops below the specified value and sets a check engine light for that. So these engines are kind of, I guess you could say, high-strung and are very picky to many different things. So they like high-quality oil, they like frequent oil changes. Like I said, and you have to do your kind of bulletproofing, so to speak, to keep them happy. But if you saw in one of our other videos, they sound fabulous with a set of long tube headers. You can rev them to over 7,000 RPM. They have power everywhere. I think they're just great. So this is the camshaft adjuster cover, upper timing cover. Like I said, it has a lot of different names depending on what all you want to call it. But that's what fits on the front of the motor there. You can see this one is installed. So this is nice. It's the part we can actually show you on the camshaft adjusters here. So these are your oil control valves, essentially. You can see these are kind of like piston rings, and these seal into these bores. And you can see you have two different oil ports there, and this is your solenoid. You got one for the intake and one for the exhaust. Your camshaft position sensors. So it's just neat, but you can see with that high pressure oil coming in through right here, when these gaskets, these are what we call the mustaches because they kind of have that look. They get hard, they start leaking, and like I said, a lot of shops will incorrectly replace valve cover gaskets when it's really these, and you have to take the valve covers off to do these correctly. So some that don't know about this engine as well can do some incorrect repairs, unfortunately. This is an early model with the aluminum valve covers, but later they did go to the plastic valve covers, and the gaskets are different, so you want to make sure you don't mix those up. But just looking at the rest of the engine, you know, it's port injected, no turbochargers, none of the high-strung, more modern stuff. Spark plugs right here under each coil pack, super easy to get to. I said valve covers easy to pull off. I mean, really, there's nothing to fuss about that's really difficult to do on these. Headers are worth it, but they are a pain. Better on the E-Class. The C-Class is a lot of work. You actually sometimes will have to hook like a ratchet strap to one side of the motor and pull it towards the other side to get some clearance. But power steering pumps, I mean, I guess I can say that's an engine flaw because of the way this setup is designed. There is actually a bulletin that if you are experiencing like high G-forces, you can actually starve the power steering pump. So essentially, if you're like out doing donuts or something like that, or it can starve the power steering pump and destroy it, which is kind of unfortunate. But it is technically an inherent flaw to this engine because of the setup of the reservoir up here. Not much you can do about it, but do the occasional thermostat. It does have this plastic nipple coming off the thermostat here, and if you look at it wrong, it will break, unfortunately. That is the wonder of plastic. You'll do your idler pulleys and stuff, but that doesn't have a whole lot to do with the engine. All right, so I have camera guy move around here a little bit, but you can't see it all that great. But back here I'll have him put a picture in, but it's the crankcase ventilation valve. It sits there on the back of the intake. These intakes are known to fill up with oil, and part of it is because of the crankcase ventilation design. So when you get your crankcase blow-by gases that have a little bit of oil mist in them, it is captured back into the intake to be burned off. But it tends to settle, and when you pull these intakes off, sometimes you can have, third of a quart, half a quart even. I don't know, Paul, what's the most you've seen in a 156 intake?
Oil?
Yes.
A whole bunch.
He says a whole bunch, but yeah, I don't think we've ever really measured it, but it's significant. And so a lot of times we'll install a catch can on these to prevent the oil buildup in there. So we talked about the pulleys in the front end. I mean, that's on any motor essentially. You can see how much oil's in here, so we'll have to clean all that off. Like I said, those are super common oil leaks. There is also, I can't really show you, but behind the AC compressor, there is a oil temperature switch and the oil cooler lines going into the side of the block. We've seen some leaks out of those. Seen a few rear main seal leaks that occur very quickly, surprisingly. It'll be completely dry, and then the client will suddenly say, hey, I got a puddle in my garage, and it'll be the rear main seal, which entails pulling the transmission and replacing it. But pretty simple thing, a lot of labor just to replace the seal, but nothing we're not used to. But that kind of gives you the rundown on this engine. Like I said, I love it personally. You just kind of have to be prepared for ownership of this. But again, like I said, there's no real catastrophic issues with these. Even with an issue like this, it is fixable. So much better than some of the later stuff where we've talked about the cylinder wall scoring and so forth. So don't be afraid to buy one of these. Just be prepared. And if you need any help, feel free to bring it here to us at DC Motorwerks, because we love seeing these engines and love keeping them on the road and doing work just like this. Hope you all enjoyed it. Look forward to seeing you on the next video.